lot of operators stay busy because they believe more deals means more revenue means more profit. But that is a very short-sighted way to look at a business operations. Revenue is one factor to affect profit, but there are many other things that actually affect that bottom line. And I'm a big believer that it doesn't matter how much you make. It ultimately matters how much you keep.
Right.
You can make 10 million, but if you spent 10 million and you're left with zero, that was pointless. You just were busy for no reason.
Quick favor before we jump in. It always surprised me that a large percentage of people who listen to the show regularly haven't yet subscribed. If you're a commercial real estate operator, investor, or builder who values conversations like this around deals, capital, and technology, please take 2 seconds and hit subscribe. It's a simple, free way to support the show. My commitment to you is that my team and I will continue bringing you higher level operators, stronger conversations, and real execution level insights every single week. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Welcome back to the AI Edge podcast, where we talk with operators, founders, and investors who are actually building real businesses using systems, data, and smart execution. Today, I've got Michael Glaspie with me, CEO of G2 Business Solutions, Fractional CFO for real estate investors, CCIM, and someone who spends his time helping operators find a hidden profitability inside their business. I think this is an important conversation right now because a lot of businesses look successful on the surface, but when you actually look at the numbers, the margins, the cash flow, what's really happening underneath, it tells a very different story. Michael works directly with real estate investors and operators to bring financial clarity, fix cash leaks, optimize margins, and help them scale with discipline, not just growth for the sake of growth. So today we're going to get into how real businesses actually run financially, where most operators are losing money without realizing it, and how to think about capital in this cycle, and where systems and AI can start to play a role in better decision making. Michael, welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks for having me, Lewis. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Let's start right here, Mike. So when we talk about your background, what's your background and how did you end up becoming fractional CFO focused on real estate investors?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started off in the military. So I went to college. I got my undergraduate degree. I joined the military. I spent 11 years in the military. And during that time, I spent 8 of those years in special forces as a Green Beret. So that was fun, did a lot of traveling, but it was very early in that career where I understood that I have to do something outside of the military as far as investments go. So I actually got my first property, ended up just being a home that I house hacked. I rented out the other rooms to other single soldiers in my unit. That kind of escalated to wholesaling, subject to lease options, growing into multifamily. And as that time passed, I decided that I was going to be licensed as a real estate agent, primarily to just purchase more properties for myself. Well, I ended up finding a business partner. We created a team. That team is still existing. We have over 100 agents spread across several states. But that really kickstarted the idea of taking the creative problem solutions that the military kind of instilled in me, taking my passion for real estate, I'm obsessed with it, and then taking my undergraduate education in accounting and finance and continuing to elevate that. So as time went on, I got my MBA from UNC Chapel Hill, and right upon completing the MBA, I had an opportunity to be a CFO for a small private equity company that focused on hospitality assets, hotels, motels, hotel management companies, things of that nature. I worked with them for about 3 years before that company was then sold into another company. And at that point in time, I got hit with the love bug. I was like, this is it. This is it for me. It's finances and real estate combined. So I started my own practice of just fractional CFO work. So I took the same experience or the same skills of what I was applying for the private equity firm and started helping individual real estate entrepreneurs. Over time, that scaled from, okay, well, yes, I can provide you fractional CFO services, but I'm noticing there's a consistent need for bookkeeping for real estate, payroll, all of these other things, taxes. And so the company began to grow, and now we're a full service accounting firm that when we serve primarily real estate businesses, property management companies, contractors, syndicators, investors, so forth.
Amazing. Mike, you are a Green Beret. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. So you got this military background. How did that shape how you think about business and finance?
I still, to this day, I believe that veterans make excellent entrepreneurs because we are taught very early on that the mission comes first. There's no such thing as failing a mission. And it doesn't matter what resources we have. We could be given, a lot of people think that Green Berets, we have lasers and jetpacks and all that. It's like, no, matter of fact, they give us all the oldest equipment, right? Some of the other units have the newer equipment, but we're expected to make do. And the thing that really shines for me with a lot of veterans is we are very resourceful. You give us the resources, we make it work. And in business, that's what we do every single day. What do we have to use? How can we get across the finish line? That's it. So I think that's probably the biggest trait that's carried over.
What was the moment where you realized most operators didn't actually understand their numbers?
So this, man, I think very early on. So I'm a very inquisitive person. I want to know why. So if I would ask, an accountant, why is this here instead of here? And they couldn't articulate it. I'm like, okay, we have a foundational issue. There's a lot of accountants or finance professionals who don't understand real estate. So then when you start asking clients, real estate investors, like you said earlier, primarily we're looking at the profit statement. That's what most business owners are looking at. They don't really understand what a balance sheet is or how to read it. They don't understand how the balance sheet actually affects their taxable income. And hardly anybody looks at the statement of cash flows. But in reality, all the business owners want to know the cash flow statement, but hardly any of them look at it. And so this was just through conversation by asking small questions. What does this expense belong to? Why aren't you showing depreciation on your balance sheet? Why aren't you showing it? And the fact that entrepreneurs or operators could not answer it, that's the telltale sign that something's wrong, something's amiss.
When did it click for you that being busy and being profitable are two completely different things?
I love this one. I love that question. So there was a client of mine who came to us and he was doing roughly about 45 to 50 flips a year consecutive. And on paper, it looked like he was making a lot of money, but he was like, Mike, I'm still living paycheck to paycheck, month to month. I'm broke. What's going on? When we sat down and we really looked at it, what he didn't have was a clear understanding that just because his top line sales, his market flip sales price, didn't actually represent the profit that he made. And so once we kind of moved things around and his gross profit now reflected how much are you actually making from the deal, we noticed that he was losing money, right? And then he was like, well, how can I be losing all this money? He was end up losing somewhere around $90,000 a year, and he was doing 40 to 50 flips. And he said, well, how can I be losing the money? So we pulled out the statement of cash flows. And in there, we tried to identify, well, where is the money coming from? And all the money was coming from financing, coming from borrowed money, other people's money. And so as we looked at it, his operating cash flow was negative. His financing was just flooded with money. So what was ultimately happening was he was borrowing money to pay off other things, and he didn't have a good system, right? But it was primarily due to the lack of clarity. There was the lack of understanding how do these he didn't know that the bookkeeper wasn't doing the right thing. The bookkeeper didn't even know they were doing the right thing, right? So at that point in time, and this is one of my earlier clients, that really cemented for me the fact that a lot of operators stay busy because they believe more deals means more revenue means more profit. But that is a very short sighted way to look at business operations. Revenue is one factor to affect profit, but there are many other things that actually affect that bottom line. And I'm a big believer that it doesn't matter how much you make, it ultimately matters how much you keep. You can make 10 million, but if you spent 10 million and you're left with zero, that was pointless. You just were busy for no reason.
You made nothing. Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about your business, G2 Business Solutions. What do you actually do for clients?
Yeah, so we are currently a full service accounting firm. So we can do bookkeeping, payroll, tax preparation, proactive tax strategy throughout the year, and our fractional CFO services. We focus primarily on the real estate industry. And so essentially, a client can come to us that's just starting, and we can get them set up with their foundational framework, make sure their LLC is set up, their bank accounts are set up correctly, and then start the bookkeeping for them. I believe every company, the one thing every company needs is good bookkeeping. Period. Doesn't matter if you're new or you're experienced. And then as they progress in their journey, then we're there. The fractional CFO services, a lot of people kind of have because now I believe it's over the past 4 years it has started being thrown around everywhere by every accountant. We offer fractional CFO. But the idea of the fractional CFO is playing the true CFO role, which you could call the quarterback of your financial department. So we actually are reaching out to your bookkeepers, your other accountants. We're making sure that we're all on the same page. The communication is uniform. And then we're taking another step and we're making sure that your compliance is all in order. The things that a true CFO should be doing. And obviously that comes at scale at a certain point, but we essentially can take our clients from zero. We have clients that generate over 60 million in revenue annually. So we have quite a range.
And who's your ideal client?
Ideal client is somebody who's generating already over $1 million in revenue. And the reason why is because honestly, we can service more of their needs, right? When they have more revenue, we can service payroll, bookkeeping, taxes, so forth and so on. However, as I mentioned, we can service the person who's just starting or the person who's been around for 20 years. So as long as you're in real estate, you're proactive and you can take guidance, that's the ideal client, right? Not the person who pushes back and says, but this profit and loss needs to be this way. It's like, well, you brought us on so we could show you what it should look like.
What situation are they usually in when they come to see you?
Yeah, the situation typically is a lack of clarity. And I know that that is kind of that's another buzzword, if you will. But if the operator or the entrepreneur cannot highlight, hey, I lost this money here because I grew this money between this time frame because if you cannot highlight the actual root cause, not the symptom or the side effect, that's what we're here for. And we typically find that people who want to come not only get the answer, but they want to improve their ongoing process. They're ready to implement a process or system to maintain that clarity moving forward. That's the typical person that seeks our services.
What are the most common financial mistakes that you see right away?
Biggest one is bookkeeping by far. Biggest one. Just things are not placed in the right area. And we have our own framework of which we go through all of our clients. And one of them is the evaluation and framework. And in the evaluation, there's four things that we look for: profitability, accuracy, sustainability, and stability. You put them all together. The question is, do you pass the evaluation? And most of the time, we all get hung up on accuracy. The books are just incorrect. And without accurate data, the rest of it doesn't even matter. We can run numbers, but we're just chasing ghosts at that point in time.
When someone hires you, what problems are they really trying to solve, even if they don't say it directly?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think the problem that they're trying to solve, and we actually try to guide most of our clients to this, is they don't feel like a business owner. They don't feel like the perception of what a business owner should be. So similar to that client that I mentioned earlier who worked, was like, I'm still living paycheck to paycheck. Or, hey, we're doing 10 million, but why am I still in my one bedroom apartment and I still got a 92 Honda Civic? Whatever the case is.
That you're spending 10 million.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's
And
why.
so part of our framework is getting that initial, and again, I'll use the word clarity, but we're trying to calibrate the thought of why'd you start the business? Now let's quantify why. So you wanted to take your kids to college? Well, how much is tuition? When do you need it? 5 years from now, or you need it today. Let's quantify that. Then you build the business around your why. And ultimately, that is the pivot point for us to determine everything else.
You talk about hidden profitability. What does that actually mean in practice?
Hidden profitability means that sometimes it's not about how much you do or sell, it's about how you sell. I'll give you a perfect example for any real estate brokers or agents. If you go into the industry and you just learn from those who have done it before you and you don't ask, well, is there any other way to do it? You're going to be told that you get a commission, right? Of whatever that is, 3%, 6%. And in that commission, you as the agent would pay for transaction coordination, marketing fees, and everything else. But why? Why couldn't you pass the marketing fees and the transaction coordination fees to the seller and only have them pay it at closing? Right. And then we could even turn around and say, well, I tell you what, I am going to charge you. You obviously got to disclose it. But if you don't sell, I've already paid for it and it's my loss. Most of the times the sellers will be like, cool, no problem. If anything, they might negotiate and say, well, I don't want to pay that much. Can I pay this much? Either way, you still changed how you approach it, and now you've increased your profitability. And this goes on for how you flip, or how you wholesale. Property management is another huge industry where we see a ton of hidden profitability in there. And so the question becomes, how do we have the highest and best use for every dollar that we're spending? That's what it typically refers to.
Amazing. Walk me through how your business actually operates from first conversation to ongoing engagement. What does that look like?
Great question. Great question. So we follow what we've called the clear profit system. And so the CLEAR is an acronym that stands for calibrate, locate, evaluate, activate, and then refine and repeat.
Oh, I like that.
This is a 90-day sprint, essentially, that we go through. And so we go through this 4 times with every client, 4 times a year, excuse me, with every client. The calibrate portion, as I've kind of alluded to, it's us identifying what was your original why, right? What is that? How do you quantify it? What's the real number? Now, what needs to be in place in the business in order to satisfy that? The locate is us actually evaluating your financial statements to see what are the KPIs, what are the ratios that we're looking at right now. All right, this is our starting point. Then we go to that evaluation phase, which is that PASS acronym that I mentioned: profitability, accuracy, sustainability, and stability. And we're seeing, how do you score? Did you actually pass this evaluation phase? But once we look at that, we then prioritize. So out of all of these minor things, what are we going to focus on first? What has the lowest risk, highest chance of probability, and increasing the ultimate goal to get you back to what your vision is? Then we activate that piece. We actually implement the plan for that. By the end of that 90 days, we now get to look back at what worked, what didn't work, we refine it, and then we repeat the process. And that's literally what we're doing. So people are coming to us, they're having that calibration call, discovery call, and then we're meeting with them as frequently as we need to in order to execute the remaining steps.
What are you looking for first when you open up someone's books?
First thing we're doing, we're jumping straight into the financial statements. We start off with the balance sheet. When we're looking for accuracy here, the balance sheet, if there are any negative assets or negative liabilities, that's a red flag. Not saying it's wrong per se, but I mean, I've seen people that said negative 200,000 in their bank account. And it's like, we know that's not accurate. Somebody just didn't know how to close out the books. So we go there immediately. We then go to the profit and loss statement, and we're looking for any general accounts. If it says general expense, miscellaneous, or just titled other, it's not good. That does us no good, provides no clarity. So we're taking note of all these little things that we have questions on. Then from there, we actually run the analysis to see, all right, we know this is wrong, but still, what do your KPIs reflect? Those are the first 2 things that we're looking at least start the conversation. And oftentimes when we do that, we do this before our first conversation. Then we sit down and we say, okay, this is what we're seeing in the business. Is this true? 9 times out of 10, it's no, that's way off. All right, we figured out where we need to start.
You talk about KPIs. What KPIs actually matter for real estate operators?
So if we had to narrow it down I'll just narrow it down to 2. There's quite a few, and they change depending on what your specific real estate niche is. Okay. But first one is going to be net operating income profit margin. All right. So not your net profit margin, but your net operating income. For those who know commercial real estate as you do, NOI is above your debt service and your seller discretionary expenses. So we want to know, how is the business performing for operating income? That's what that NOIPM stands for, or shows us. Then we want to go to the statement of cash flows, and we want to check out your operating cash flow ratio. And this is how much cash flow is actually coming in from operations compared to your liabilities, right? And this is really important for us because oftentimes, if you just go to operating cash flow ratio for flippers, developers, typically all of their money's coming in from financing. All of it. Well, not all of it. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the majority of all of their financing is coming from their cash flow is coming from financing. So when we look at those two ratios, we can determine is the business actually profitable? If the business is profitable, it's something that we're doing on the back end that's causing the loss at the end of the year. And then when we look at operating cash flow, how much of that profit actually is translating to positive cash flow? Those are the first two that I would say for everybody that they could look on their KPIs as a starting.
Which KPIs are people tracking that really don't matter?
There's so many. There's so many. And I'm big on data.
Yeah.
But my thought is like, if you're not going to use the data, don't track it. What's the point of you tracking it? I'll give you one. I think it's an important KPI, but at a certain point. So revenue or profit per employee. Okay. Great metric. But if you're profitable and you got a nice solid team, don't worry about that. Like that's something for a team of, 30 plus 50 employees. Now it start making sense because we might be able to streamline or optimize. But if you're profitable and you got a nice little team, don't worry about that. Another one would be debt to equity or even debt to asset. But if you're a flipping company, right? So you're going to track it, but the understanding that the asset aspect is only based off the book value or what you paid for it. It's not going to show you the market value or the ARV. And so when you're looking at it, you're like, wow, it's so high. I got to focus on it. It's always going to be high because you're borrowing 90% of 100% of the purchase per square meter. It's always going to be high, right? So again, I think it just all depends on if you're going to use it, great, track it. If you're not going to use it or if it's not relevant for your specific niche, you can track it, but don't waste your time on it. Just have it in the background.
Michael, how do you turn financial data, because there is a lot of data, into actual decisions, not just reports?
Yeah. What we like to do with this one is we believe that everything's like a math problem, right? If you're looking for 4, it could be 2 plus 2 equals 4 or 3 plus 1, whatever the case is. So when we look at revenue, we also call it lead versus lag measures, very popular term. The lag measure is revenue. Revenue was created by an input. But every lag measure has at least 2 inputs. Everything has at least 2 inputs. So we start dissecting, we start trying to identify what were the 2 inputs that led to this result. So if we don't like this result, what led to it? And then we break those into what led into those. And we consistently are doing our lead versus lag. But this allows us to take this data. Again, we focus only on what's important. We focus on the ones that we know that we can control. So we can't necessarily control open response rate on email marketing, right? But we can control how many times we follow up or call. So we focus on what we control and we continue to go down. And once we break it as far back as we can, we then look at them. What can we control? What has the lowest risk to implement with the fastest implementation time? And then we decide, what do we take action on? Kind of rank it by priority. We implement it. We evaluate it. Did it work? Great. Let's do more of it. If it didn't work, then let's go down the list and move on to the next one.
Love it. I can see the green beret in you, man. It's like, it's a mission, right? Like we're on a mission here. I love it.
100%. We got to get to it. We got to get it done.
I love it. You mentioned EOS. How are you implementing that into your business?
I love EOS. So EOS is how I run this business here. So we focus on the finances. We don't do operational management or consulting for companies, but I have tried to get a lot of companies to move over to EOS. I'm a firm believer of in my opinion, everything needs structure. Yeah, it might be the military in me, but when you have structure, it just becomes, you can take out the desire for motivation or the need to remember anything because it's just there. You just do it. EOS, we actually use the software program 90.io, which is a software program specifically for EOS. But we hire and fire based off of it. We have our mission statement, our core values, our clear profit system process in there. We do all of our employee quarterly conversations in there. I mean, it's great because it's just a wonderful resource. We run all of our meetings out of there, our level 10 meetings. It allows the team to truly be on the same page. What feedback I've gotten before, because I've been doing this for a while, and you grow over time. Feedback I've gotten before when some of my earlier companies where some of the team members are saying, "What? Why are we even doing this? What is this? Like, I can't read your mind, Mike. What's happening?" But by implementing EOS with the constant updates, the quarterly conversations, the annual company level review, the whole company now understands what our mission is and what we're driving to be. They understand why if I step up and I say, all right, we need to have this one-on-one talk, you understand why, because I've told you 3 times every month. So it helps a lot of that conversation. It helps with the buy-in of the team, which ultimately I think is honestly the most important as you're building a team, in my opinion.
That's huge. Culture is number one.
Absolutely.
What systems are non-negotiable for you right now?
So the 90IO, which is basically EOS, QuickBooks. So what we've elected to do is there's several accounting firms that will operate in multiple systems. We've elected to focus on efficiency. So we only operate in the Intuit platforms. So QuickBooks, ProConnect for taxes, it all just communicates. QuickBooks payroll. It allows us to really be quick with what we're doing. So that's a non-negotiable for us. And honestly, the calendar.
Love it.
It's something so simple, but I say this almost kind of tongue in cheek, but I do live and die by the calendar. I really do. Even in my personal life, if I want to do something with my friends, it has to be on the calendar. Otherwise it's like I may not remember it. But those three things have made the biggest difference. I do believe that, we need a system for handling our clients, but we also need a system for accounting. And in the realm of accounting, everybody should have a software system, not Excel, not Microsoft Excel. And I hate, the rental property owners out there or the property managers out there may say that they could use Buildium or Appfolio or Rent Meter. You can't. It is not set up for accounting the way that true accounting is supposed to be. So that's my take on that one.
Amazing. Every operator eventually hits a point where the business grows faster than the systems. When
Yes,
deals or clients start stacking up, what's the first thing that tends to break operationally for you guys?
that is a great question. There's a couple things that come to mind, but if I had to narrow it down as simply as possible, I would say communication breaks down first. As it piles up, we identify bottlenecks. That's what we try to do. But when you have the bottleneck up front to the person receiving all of the inquiries or the invoices or the whatever, when they lose track of it, then it just falls apart. So they disappear. All those leads disappear. And I would say communication probably breaks down first for us, specifically for us, but I would see that for most companies as well.
Yeah.
That
How
we
do you handle that? How are you managing that? If, say, you scaled your business 10x,
Mhm.
all of a sudden communication gets a little iffy, right?
Yep.
How are you
Yep.
handling that? What do you do?
So this is my approach to it. First, the easiest thing to do, the easiest lever to pull is bring in more talent. All right. So easiest lever is, hey, we need at least an assistant for this position so we can process them through. So we might hire a temporary position or something like that. The second thing, which is much more of a permanent solution, is figuring out how the software, the systems that we use can now help us manage this. For example, we do use Go High Level. As the information comes in, as the clients come in, they all pile up as potential leads. So we never lose them. It's just how quickly can we get to them, right? Then the next process is, all right, well, now that we have Go High Level, we have this temporary position. Can AI and Go High Level start responding for us and scheduling for us? Can we do that? All right, great. How can we make the system more efficient? We
Amazing.
focus a lot on trying to lean on our software for the efficiency needs. That way, for us, if we're looking, it does cut costs, but when we're looking at talent, we could try to hire the best talent and pay them the best rates because we don't need 30 people to do the job. We only need three, hypothetically.
Where do you see most businesses lose control financially as they grow?
That's a great question, too. Um, Lose control financially in the real estate space, especially when they're active in real estate. So, not holding rentals, but they're the flips, the wholesalers, the developers, marketing. They usually lose control there because in their mind, and rightfully so, because it's been taught to us forever, if you want more business, you have to spend more in marketing. You have to do more in marketing. And that is a half-baked thought. If we truly run a budget analysis, we truly run a marketing return on investment analysis, we could probably cut our marketing costs, but increase the efficiency. And what we see is most people are just like, hey, we're sucking right now. We don't have deals. So let's increase our marketing budget by 100% or by 50%. And it's like, well, now what we've just done is create a major cash crunch. And then they want to grab financing or debt to help support it. So I would see that as one of the major ones. The second one where they typically lose control is honestly, it's going to be salaries and wages. When a business is doing really well, all of a sudden the nice to haves get hired, right? That internal marketer, that internal social media, whatever. And then as soon as the market shifts, we're like, dang, what do we do? I don't want to fire them. And if they blew up overnight, oftentimes, like I mentioned earlier, the easiest thing to do is hire new people. The difficult thing to do is to sit down and figure out the software program. And so again, you start to inflate this need for more salary and more wages that truly isn't sustainable.
Love it, Mike. Let's talk a little bit about financial strategy in the current market.
Yeah,
What does a financially healthy real estate business actually look like right now?
I love it. I love it. So a mix between strategy and what it would look like, I guess. So let's talk about profit margins first off. Profit margins, we're probably looking at somewhere between 20 to 40%, again, depending on your business. It's pretty healthy in the market now. All right. Is it fair? Obviously, if you're doing 30, 40 million, yeah, you might be at a 5 to 10% profit mark. That's fine. Let's just deal with scale. But the market has, I don't want to say dried up. That's not the right word. The market has significantly changed, put it that way. Especially over the past 18, 24 months or so with the loan rates, market, appetite for buyers on the back end. So when we're looking at that, obviously profit margins, if we maintain the same operations and acted ignorant as if nothing changed, profit margins drastically decreased. So a healthy company now should have profits somewhere between that 20 and 40% if you're actively operating, again, depending on the niche. As far as strategy goes, it's how do we get there, right? And so if we were operating in 2020, whatever, 2023 in a certain way, high capacity, and we were making all this money, and now it's 25, 26, and we're not making it, how did we get there? And the idea is going back to that thought of what is the highest and best use of every dollar we're spending? And honestly, evaluating those marketing dollars, right? So if we got 5 different marketing channels, which one is giving us the return on we want? All right, well, let's decrease these and pour more into the one that's giving us more. How do we evaluate personnel to see what's actually the return on investment for this position? A lot easier to do with sales guys who are tied to actual revenue. What about the admin team? How are we evaluating them? How are we evaluating management team? Those are the different things that we would have to be discussing to make sure that we can maintain that 20 to 40% profit margin on a really healthy business. And obviously, if we're looking at capital reserves, we're probably looking at 3 to 6 months of capital reserves. Honestly, right now, it's probably 2 to 3 months just because of how the market has shifted. Or on a balance sheet, we're not looking at a lot of debt. Obviously, if it's good debt for rental properties and things of that nature, that's fine. A nice LTV ratio or debts to asset or ratio would be around 60, 65% right about now. That gives you the room because if interest rates stay where they are, they increase, you're going to lose loan value when you go to try to refinance. So we want to stay somewhere around that 65 percent or so. Collectively, that would be a healthy business right about now.
That's beautiful. Where are operators getting in trouble right now in this cycle?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I would say where they're getting in trouble with is the debt because they're still borrowing at the same volume and rate as they were previously, but they haven't really accounted for the true effective cost of funds. And I'll give you an example. So the face value, the nominal value of the loan could be 8%, but if you had to pay 2 points to get the loan, if the loan is due in 8 months or 12 months and not 30 years, all of these things factor into what the actual effective rate is, the effective cost of the funds are. And when you really start to look at it, so this goes back, as you mentioned, I'm a CCIM instructor. So I teach financial analysis for commercial properties. And if we go back to the fundamental thought of how do we know if we have positive or negative leverage, it's a very simple concept. Is my cost of funds lower than the unlevered cap rate on a property? If it is, that means I can bring in outside money and I'm basically going to create a higher yield because I'm going to have that spread or that arbitrage between the cost of funds and the unlevered capital. But when they don't account, most people do not account for the total effective cost. So they might look at it and be like, I can borrow money at 7.5, but the cap rate's at 8. Oh, this is a no brainer. I'm going to take it. But the cost of funds might be 8.3. And now what we just done is create negative leverage. Now we're actually decreasing our return on investment or our yield because of the outside money. Not saying that that's a bad thing all the time, but that's I think, a major important step that people are not considering. And it's not just for long-term holds. It's for the flips. It's for all the other uses of the borrowed capital.
What are you seeing across portfolios today?
The biggest one that we've seen, and I'm sure you've ran across this too, in 2021, 2020, 2022, indication was all the rage. And
Yeah.
everybody was underwriting, thinking that they were going to sell at an even more compressed cap rate than what they bought. I'm a firm believer when you underwrite, and this is just a conservative piece of me, when you underwrite, whatever your buying cap rate is, it should increase when you sell because all the renovations you've done are now 7, 10 years old. So the next person's going to have to come in and do more renovations. It shouldn't compress, right? In my opinion. But a lot of people said, I'm going to buy it at this 6 cap. I'm going to sell it at a 4 or whatever it was. And now they're all stuck. Their money is due. All their investors thought their money was going to be coming out. They can't refinance it or sell it at the disposition that they thought. And they're all stuck. And we're finding that the large portfolio owners, the asset managers, are now trying to be very creative. Could we package up and get a loan for several locations? Can we potentially refinance, return a piece of the equity, and then put the rest of the guys on a promissory note with a delayed payout? All of these things. They got in trouble because of the overly optimistic thought of what was going to happen in the future. And so we're seeing that across the board with the big portfolios. So what the big portfolios are now doing is that, again, they're trying to get really creative to increase the bottom line NOI. What we've seen a lot lately is our apartment owners are now trying to turn a select amount, maybe 5%, maybe even 10% or more of the units into short-term rentals if they can. So that would increase the bottom line. They're going to use their in-house or their on-staff cleaning crew and maintenance crew to maintain the rentals, and they're just going to increase the overall NOI. Or they're looking at what else, what other amenities can we do? For example, vending machines and ATMs, we can plug those in all day and we don't have to own them. We can have somebody else give us rent money to place their machine on our property. Again, increasing the NOI. So there's quite a few of these creative measures that we're seeing a lot of the portfolios do to try to get out of some of that overly optimistic underwriting that they did originally.
I love it, Mike. This is the AI Edge podcast. So we talk about AI as leverage. Curious how you're thinking about AI and automation inside of finance and operations.
Great question. Oh, AI and finance can be really, really, really helpful in the bookkeeping aspect. QuickBooks is already using it, as I'm sure other softwares are. But this is the idea of learning the owner, the operator. After we see a certain amount of transactions in a certain place, it's going to start automatically or suggesting those categorizations. So it's going to help with streamlining efficiency on the finance side. QuickBooks has also created, it's still fairly new in beta testing, but a KPI performance measure. And so it's actually tracking a lot of the KPIs for you. Now, we believe the concept of garbage in, garbage out. So we need to make sure that the accuracy is good going in. But now when you know what KPIs to look for, QuickBooks can produce it for you. So
Amazing.
now you can create these managerial reports inside of QuickBooks, and now you have your financial report for review once a month. So I think that's really helpful in the finance side. When we look at operations, honestly, I'm still looking into this myself, but I'm really excited about these AI sales bots. I'm really excited about that. I think being able to train a bot to do the follow up and get them to schedule the meeting would allow me to alleviate, because we have one person right now. She is a virtual assistant. She's based in the Philippines, but she is focused on, let me get these guys followed up and get them scheduled. I feel like we can make an AI bot do that. I genuinely do. I just don't know how to do it. But that's what I'm excited about most, is that AI sales bot, basically getting them from interested party to a sales call.
Mike, Edge Partners AI has that.
Perfect. We're going to be
We'll
talking
talk.
right after this. Yeah,
We'll
we're going
talk.
to talk. Yeah, absolutely.
Let me flip the switch a little bit. Where's AI overhyped in finance?
The overhype is the whole, can I create a financial or a tax strategy with AI? And the reason why it's overhyped in that category is because, as we all know, AI is based on what input it has. So if we're using an open source LLM, it's feeding directly from the internet, which could be a blog. It could be, some other person just sitting in the corner somewhere typing something. So it's not quite accurate. If we use a closed LLM like Notebook LLM, then we have to feed it the information. We have to feed it the tax code or the whatever. And the likelihood of us feeding it all the information that we need in order to get this specific state, the specific county, the specific code, very, very unlikely. So I think when you're thinking on the higher level of the strategy, AI is just not there yet. I think it will be. It's just not there yet. So you still need that industry input from somebody who lives and operates in that space.
Mike, do you think most operators understand their numbers well enough to even use AI effectively?
No, no, I don't. Because honestly, when you go, I can go out right now and ask, you can line up the operators and I'll ask them specific, what's your KPIs? And I'll name the KPIs and they'll look at me and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. It's like I'm talking German or something. So yeah, I agree. I don't think they know it well enough to even know what to ask.
If you were advising a real estate operator today, what systems should they have in place before even thinking about AI?
That's a great question. I'm gonna obviously say QuickBook. I'm not sponsored by QuickBooks or anything else. It's just what I live by. And you could use. I mean, there's plenty more out there. There's Sage, Zero. It doesn't matter. But getting a system set up, making sure that is updated frequently, right? That could be weekly or monthly, but make sure it's updated. Make sure it's accurate. Do that first. Do that first, because even as soon as you have that, I'm gonna be honest with you, most, especially newer entrepreneurs, if you could just see, are you making money or losing money? That's all you need to really care about in the first year, or so. So just having that would be more than enough. And then as you progress with complexity, and if the data is accurate and it is up to date, now we can plug it into AI, and AI can start to tell us more.
Why do you think so many business owners or operators avoid looking at their numbers?
Honestly, I think it's fear.
Really?
I think it's fear of
Knowing the truth?
knowing the truth. Yeah. We live in this world of constant comparison. It's, we see everybody on social media doing this, and it's like, okay, here's a real story. So we have a friend of ours came to us and she was just so embarrassed. And she was like, Mike, I haven't filed taxes in 6 years. I was like, I didn't know. I didn't, da, 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 da. So we go in, we do everything, and she ends up owing about $120,000 just in taxes, right? Could have been worse, but she ended up owing a lot. And she's just so embarrassed. She doesn't want anybody to know. And she never wanted to look at it. She never wanted to address it at year 3 or year 4. She never wanted to address it until it finally was just so heavy on her conscience that she reached out. And I honestly think this is what the problem is with most entrepreneurs. They don't want to feel like a failure. Some quit their jobs to support their family. They don't want to go back to their spouse and say, I messed up. They don't want to go back to their friends or their colleagues and say, I made a mistake. I think that's what the underlying, and we may never really know, but that's the feeling that I get with most of it. I'm a believer of, rip off the Band-Aid. It's only going to get worse with time. Just tell me what it is and let's address it so we can fix it. And that's the approach that we try to take with our clients as well.
That's painful. You
Yeah.
try to avoid pain and gain pleasure, right? So
Yes.
that's a tough call. I mean, that's a tough decision or a tough conversation you need to have with your spouse or partner or whoever
Yeah.
it is. That's scary.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You posted about people overspending on lifestyle, Mike. How
Yeah.
did that impact their long-term wealth?
Well, we have this, I think it's either called Parkinson's law. Yes, Parkinson's law. The idea of that if it's available We will use it. Humans will use it. The best kind of thought of this is when you think about the one lane highway and it's always jammed, and the city comes in and says, all right, we'll make it two. We'll make it two. But then they make it two. And as soon as it's done, it's always jammed. And it's like, what happened? It didn't help anything. Right. And the idea comes with the same thing applies with money. All of a sudden, we have more money. So we spend more money. And this the whole lifestyle creep, as we call it. When lifestyle creeps, and you hit the nail on the head, we try to avoid pain. And oftentimes the thought of losing something is more painful than the thought of putting in the work to gain something. And so when we're stuck in this lifestyle creep, we'll do everything to maintain that lifestyle, that car note, the whatever, the private school, the da da da. And oftentimes we do it way too soon, way too soon. If we were being more methodic about our approach, we would have, 2, 3 years of consecutive performance years. So we know what the baseline is. We'd have a reserve set up. We'd invest in cash flowing assets to help support and all these things. But, it's just human nature to, if you see it, you got it. So what we do often recommend, and this is nothing that we ever created, but the profit first. If you've ever heard of that, profit first, they have profit first for real estate investors by David Richter. But the idea of separate the accounts, separate the money, separate where the eyes are. So you have an operating account, you've got a reserve account, you got these different accounts, and that's the purpose for the money. When you do it that way, you can still pay yourself, but you limit yourself. You can't just take out 10,000 when you want or whatever it is. You put away 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000. That is one of the not all clients like it, but for the clients that do, it's a very simple way to kind of nip that in the bud.
What's something most business owners misunderstand about taxes?
All of it. There's just a lot of there's a lot of incorrect advice out there on TikTok and all the social medias. I think, so me personally, I think taxes are sexy. Now, I don't say that just because I operate in taxes, but think about this. This is my thought. The tax code is just a set of rules, okay? Just like if you picked up a game of Monopoly or anything else. And I'm the type of guy, when I play a game, I'm going to read all the rules. Because when I do something, you can't say I cheated. I'm like, page 7, paragraph B, right? It says right here, I can do it.
That's
exactly, right? So if you think of taxes as just a big game, you're just learning the rules. And so now when somebody comes at you and says, well, you can't do that, page 7, paragraph B, now you feel a hell of a lot more confident about the moves that you're making. It's no longer a guess. And when you understand the rules, just like in games, you can start to you can think 3 steps ahead. I think a lot of entrepreneurs tend to think of taxes as a burden that's unavoidable and it will just happen to come up. I like to think of it like a game that we can be playing all year long. And I might move a piece over here for this year. So in 3 years from now, I can move this piece here and I can avoid $100,000 in taxes. So personally, I think it's sexy. I think there's just a lot of, there's not enough, I don't know the right word, but I don't think there's enough champions for the fact that taxes don't have to be confusing or a burden. It can be enjoyable because what we're studying with taxes, we're studying it, how do we keep more of the money we earn? That's what it is. And people will spend thousands of dollars studying hobbies, like I love golf or whatever else is cars. But people won't spend time or money studying the one thing that can fund the hobbies, which is taxes or money. So that's my approach to it, or that's my thought behind taxes and what most entrepreneurs are missing.
Love it, Mike. Let's have a little fun, a little lightning round, some quick hits. You
Okay.
ready? Biggest financial mistake you see operators making?
Too much, too soon.
Best financial decision you made in your business?
Marrying my wife.
That's number 1.
Yeah.
Something you believe about money that most people disagree with?
Make money for 10 years before you can enjoy it.
That's a good one. What are you focused on improving right now?
Communication in the company.
Nice. Revenue or profit?
Profit. Revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity. Always profit.
Always profit. Growth or discipline?
Discipline. With discipline comes growth.
Speed or precision?
Precision. Once you get accurate, then you can focus on speed.
I love it, Mike. Where can people find you and connect with you online?
You can find us everything at the website, www.g2businesssolutions.com. You could also find me on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Michael mike.s.glass.
Fantastic. Mike, this was a strong conversation. I appreciate you coming on and breaking down what really is happening inside business financially, not just what people see on the surface. To everyone listening, if you got value from this, make sure that you subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of the AI Edge podcast. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.